So, can you write a good novel first time around? It's a great question, many layers. I'm going to try to answer it in this video, but I think another worthwhile question is, should you try to write a good novel first time around? Even more layers. Let's get started. So, if you're brand new to writing and you're just looking for that quick and easy yes or no as to whether it's possible to write a great novel on your first go, here's the bad news. Not a lot about writing in my experience is quick or easy, so I don't really have the ability to give you that yes or no. But the good news is, you do. And here's how. A lot of brand new writers and established writers look at writing a book as though it's this single activity. It's just a task that they can do like any other task. Here's the thing, here's how you do it. Others may tell you differently, but in my experience, it just doesn't work like that. You're not writing a book, any book. You're writing your book. Why that's a different thing is because writing a book is not a universal experience. It's not the same for every single writer that attempts it. Parts of it might be, but I'd say the majority probably isn't. Imagine a 100-meter sprint race thing. All of the runners line up, they stay in their lanes, and they sprint to the end in the same direction. There are no alternative strategies. You can't deviate from the track, you can't fly, you can't make your own route. There's basically one way to do it, and everyone pretty much does it the same. Writing a book is nothing like that. It depends entirely on you. That's why I said I can't give you a straight answer as to whether or not it's possible to write a great novel first time around, but you can. And you can, you just have to look at it in a very specific way. So, how do you do that? When I first started writing, I naturally assumed that writing a good book was just as simple as finding out how to do it. Researching the methods, figuring out how to put things on the page, what to include, what to leave out. I figured there would be a well-established method or well-established formula for writing a book. I assumed I could Google novel structure or how to present a novel on the page and come up with the answer. But instead I got a lot of answers, a lot of methods, but there wasn't one for me. I couldn't make any of it work. I tried to use story structures, I looked up style guides for how to present my novel on the page, I looked up the average word count for different genres, and I tried to outline my novel from start to finish before I even started writing anything. But none of that stuff helped me make my first novel good. Nothing did, in actual fact, but I'll come on to that. Trying to take on and understand all of those different things felt hugely overwhelming to me, and maybe it does to you too. All of that information didn't lead me to feel like I was doing the thing and writing a book and making progress. And because none of those things registered with me, it obviously led me to think that I couldn't write a novel, that I didn't have what it took. But that was because I was trying to write a novel and not my novel. I say this a lot on my channel, but there is no right and wrong way to write a novel. And frustrating as that may be to beginners who just want the facts, I do think that's a valuable truth. People will tell you that there are exact methods and that to succeed you need to be using this exact formula or this secret method, and they probably believe that themselves. But the fact is, they can only tell you what works for them. If writing were treasure hunting, they could tell you exactly where they dug up that chest of gold, and they could be sharing a real secret with you. But if you were to go there, to that exact spot and dig, you'd find nothing but sand. You'd come up empty, like I did when I was trying to write my first novel based on a myriad of facts and rules. I followed examples of what had worked for other people because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't realise something really important. One important thing. As a beginner, it's really hard to notice, but even if you've got no experience whatsoever with writing, you still get to decide how you do it. Once I figured that out, and it did take a while, it helped a lot. So let me share with you a few things that might help you avoid the mistakes that I made and make it far more likely that your first novel is going to be good. Like I said before, I can only tell you what worked for me. I can't tell you the exact right way. You and you alone have the answer to that, even if you don't know it yet. And not having a clue about that is normal, by the way. Anyway, my biggest piece of advice when it comes to writing a good novel first time around is to slightly change what good means to you. Oh, here we go. This is going to be some of that aspirational nonsense, isn't it? It's not about the success, it's about the achievement of doing it. Success means different things to different people. It's not about the money, blah, blah, blah. Done? Yeah? While I agree with most of that, that wasn't actually what I meant. What I meant was, I think you're far more likely to write a good book if you're enjoying writing it, not if you're focused on doing it technically correctly. And if a good novel to you means one that you enjoyed writing, then surely that's going to mean it's more enjoyable to read. If you're not having fun, then it's just far more likely that you'll quit. And if you close the door on that first novel, it's quite likely that you'll close the door on all future novels too. We don't want that. If it's fun though, if above all else you figure out you just like telling stories, then it's really easy to follow that through to something interesting and genuine, or the heart of your creativity. Don't stop and wonder if you're doing things right. Follow that fun and go wherever that takes you. If it seems fun to outline your whole novel first, great. If it seems more fun to just jump straight in, do that. Don't assess your performance as you go along, just keep going, because here's something it took me quite a long time to figure out. In your first attempt, you can't really go wrong. If you're naturally hugely talented and lucky and creative, then you can write a good novel first time around, in which case you win. If none of that happens and you have a much tougher time with it, as most people do, then congratulations. You've just completed some of the hardest pages of writing that you'll ever have to write, and they will make every bit of writing you do after just that little bit easier. And if you manage to focus on the fun while you were doing it, then you enjoyed the process as well. So thinking back to my first attempt, if I could have that time over again, I would honestly pick the hard way, because most learning comes from not getting things right. That's why I said at the start of this video that the better question might be, should you write a good novel first time? If you're aiming for a career as an author, or you want to be published, or you just want to write the best book you possibly can, then I can totally understand the urgency of wanting to write something good so you can sell it and get published and finally quit that day job. I understand. But if we try to think a little bigger, all of the learning and all of the understanding you'll gain from writing a book that isn't perfect or is far from perfect, I think is more valuable long term, though I appreciate it probably doesn't feel like it. Another thing I learned from writing a novel and then another and another and another is that by the time you finish writing them, they feel slightly different to you. They might not necessarily mean as much to you as they do now. I'm not saying throw that book on the scrap heap, you wasted a load of time writing something rubbish. What I'm saying is that grand story that you have in your mind might become one of a multitude of stories rather than your only hope. That grand story might move to a different place in your mind where it'll become the foundation that every better story you're going to write will stand on. That story might be the warning light when you're about to repeat a mistake, or it might be the guideline around which you'll innovate. And that is so much more valuable to you than one good book. A great first book is a once in a blue moon kind of thing, but a great learning experience from your first book is fuel that you can take into every piece of writing that you'll ever write. My first novel wasn't great. It didn't catapult me to stardom, and only a handful of people actually read it, but it still matters to me a lot. Only now it just doesn't have the burden of all of my expectations riding it. And I look at it now as the first time I figured out what direction I wanted to take my writing in. And 10 years later, here I am, still following that same trajectory. So how can you say that wasn't a good first book? Write your thing. You can't lose. As always, thank you so much for watching. There's tons more videos on my channel, so feel free to hit subscribe if this was useful. And as always, happy writing.